Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
Yes. 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole. Throws it up. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
Pretty simple. I win.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Google away, good peeps. Jim Coyle with it today. How are you? Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us as always. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Tuesday, March 12th. Another great lineup in store. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten Network will be joining us. Chronic Hoosier, Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times as well. Hope you're having a great start to your week and ready for some hoops because it's that time, man. Call it the conference tournaments underway. And it's ready to get going. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymorehonda.com to get more to your door in the best of new and used vehicles. How's everybody doing? Appreciate everybody jumping on the Andy Moore Honda hotline and listening no matter where you are on any of our affiliates. ESPN, The Ref, always the right call, 97.7 in Evansville. Or 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, the voice of the region, WJOB, and Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. We appreciate everybody. How's your day going? John, the producer, along for the ride as well. And lots of great comments already. David says, "Good hello from Dagonia Springs." 4 in a row. I think he's talking about the Hoosiers. 4 Big Ten wins in a row. And they definitely have knocked that in. Bob checking in from Georgetown. Michael from parts unknown here in Indiana. John from listening on WKRP in Cincinnati. Ryan, how are you doing, sir? We appreciate you. Fred. Oh, look at Cheryl as well. We'll make sure I don't miss anybody that's jumping on early. If I do, Brian. Let's see, David, didn't want to miss him. Oh, from Begonia, that's right. So I'd run down through there, Michael and Donald and Kevin. Got them all so far. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody as always. Got to see some good peeps over the weekend. Spent some time with AJ Moye, which was awesome. Looking forward to going Jeffersonville heading to Newcastle. So I'm looking forward to going up to Newcastle, although there's going to be great games all over. I just looking forward to going back to that venue. It's been a minute since I've been there, so one of the great venues that there are. Period. It's one of the 2 best high school gyms in the biggest in the world, along with Seymour. And spent a lot of time at Seymour growing up and looking forward to heading back up to Newcastle. How's your day going? Last night, the women had center stage at the Chop Shop Market Table for the radio show. The men are off and getting prepared for the Big Ten tournament, which starts tomorrow with first round games. Indiana will not play until Thursday as they will await the winner of the Penn State game. Penn State, Michigan, I believe. So I expect that to be Penn State. You never know. And there's nothing that would be better for Indiana if they got upset. Brian, you're not wrong. Every time you hear that name, how do you not want to chant AJ Moye? There's someone said the other day that I was with that's just the perfectly. There's never been a name better suited for a chant. He's not wrong. Not wrong. Let's see. Brian said, Michael's asking if you think Jeffersonville would go to Newcastle on Friday night instead of, or Saturday. I'm not sure what that question's about, so I'll just skip that one, John Boy. How are things in your neck of the woods, Johnny?
I tell you what, it's in my neck of the woods. It's a big day down in Louisville because it is more than likely Kenny Payne's last day as the head coach. They play in their day of shame ACC tournament matchup this afternoon against NC State, and they've got 8 wins on the season and 12 wins in the entirety of the Kenny Payne era. And this will more than likely be, like I said earlier, his final game.
I would imagine. That's bad because they haven't exactly been devoid of talent.
No, not at all. It's not a talent issue whatsoever. We don't need to get too deep into the weeds, but to be quite blunt about it, Kenny Payne from the start has just been way in over his head at the helm of the Louisville program. He's never been a head coach. Obviously, he was a very, very good assistant at Kentucky and then had a good career as an assistant in the NBA for a while. But being a head coach, especially at the college level, something that he's not really cut out for, unfortunately.
Yeah, not everybody is meant to be a head coach. It just doesn't work. Charlie Weiss was a great assistant at Notre Dame. He had 0 success as a head coach. I'll tell you one a little closer to home than that. Cam Cameron, a former Indiana great, 2-sport star for the Hoosiers, playing basketball and football, is and was a tremendous offensive coordinator. But his days as a head coach, not good. Just not good. And it's not really a knock on him. It's just some people are great at certain aspects. He's a heck of an offensive coordinator. Just no success as a head coach. So there's no shame in that. Just find your lane. Find your lane and stay in your lane, bro.
By the way, speaking of, here's a little Indiana connection, not necessarily an IU connection, but more so Terre Haute and Indiana State. But Josh Schertz, a name that is being talked about a lot as a potential replacement for Kenny Payne at Louisville. We'll see if that ends up being the case. A lot of people down in Louisville think that would be an underwhelming hire. Obviously, it would be a bit of a risk.
You know why it would be underwhelming to them? Because they don't know who he is.
Yeah, well, it's not whether they know who he is or not. It's somebody who hasn't ever coached at the Power 5, Power 6 level. So I feel like if you're a major program, and it doesn't even have to be Louisville, you would be a little underwhelmed by somebody like that.
I agree. I think that U of L fans they're not to the level that IU fans are with their voices being heard. Well, partly because they don't. Indiana has the second largest following on Twitter that there is. Although there is a gigantic gap between 1 and 2. Let me say that first. Duke has over 2 million followers. Indiana is second with 1.1 million. They have twice as many.
That blows my mind. I would have thought
it blows my mind as well.
Number 1, honestly.
Wouldn't you think that they'd at least be number 2?
Yeah.
But Indiana is second. So a lot of voices there. So, but I think Louisville also, they have this concept that I don't know. They've won 2 national championships,
and one that was vacated. I mean, to be fair, even though they did get it, taken away, they still won.
So that makes it 3. That makes it 3, right?
Yes.
It's hard for me to remember to say that. So they won 3 national championships. So that puts them up there. But their fans, when I look at when things are not going well and they don't attend, and you're in a major metropolitan city, I'm like, man, they don't have real fans. They really don't.
I would beg to differ. I will say this. It's definitely not nearly as big as the Indiana fan base. That is without question. But for Louisville, U of L is their pro team, especially in the city. I mean, I know you have Kentucky and Lexington, but if you live in the city of Louisville, the Cardinals are their pro team, and they are treated as such because, and again, I'm not trying to say that it is the exact same thing, but because there are no professional sports in the state of Kentucky, both college teams get treated like pro teams. By the fans, if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
There's not as big of a student contingent. Like for example, like the student section at Indiana, that's unmatched. You don't get that kind of atmosphere at U of L games. It's more so, again, it feels more like a professional environment at those games because it's mainly adults attending those games. Yeah,
makes sense. Because they definitely, the fall off is unbelievable. I mean,
yes.
What are they've been averaging like 5,000 people a game?
Yeah, the numbers that they show are, I believe, a little more exaggerated than they actually truly are because they don't want to be more embarrassed. I mean, for as large of an arena as they have, and for Indiana fans, obviously you're used to a 17,000 seat arena. The KFC Yum Center holds 5,000 more than that, and they are struggling to even put a fraction of that inside the building right now. So,
yeah, I'd say the Louisville women's team. Averages more than they do. The Indiana women's team averages 10,000 a game, which is unprecedented. But the women's team, they've got a great program.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it has been interesting to see, kind of that take precedent in terms of basketball in the city of Louisville. But Louisville probably, I know we've talked about this, especially last week, between Louisville and Ohio State, those are probably the 2 biggest jobs that will be open this offseason. And, I mean, you may see a Michigan open up as well. And, I mean, you never know what else may open up. But Louisville will more than likely be the top of the cream of the crop, so to speak, for new head coaches or, coaches looking to make a step up over this offseason.
John says, hey, from Southport, appreciate you, my friend. Some news, college basketball news for the Big 12 tournament. Hunter Dickinson will not be available for Kansas. That will impact their seed, I would imagine, although he'll probably be available for the NCAA tournament. But not only will Hunter Dickinson, it's Kevin McCullough Jr. also will not play in the Big 12 tournament this week due to injuries. Bill Self confirmed on Monday. Dickinson left Saturday's loss to Houston, a team that they just destroyed not long ago. But what Self later disclosed as a dislocated shoulder. Not good. If you go back and you remember when it was OG Anunoby that kept, or no, it was Juwan Morgan that kept having shoulder problems, right?
I'm pretty sure it was Juwan Morgan.
Yeah. That haunted him there for a minute. So that could be a major impact on Kansas's hunt in the national title picture. I'm sure he'll be available for the NCAA tournament. They want to get him ready for that, but the sheer fact that that's there makes that more susceptible of happening again. So Hunter Dickinson out of the Big 12 tournament, as well as Kevin McCullough Jr. So they will be going there into that tournament with a hand tied behind their back, no pun intended. Bill Self said on Monday that the shoulder injury will not require surgery and that he's already started rehab. So that's probably why they're just taking him out. They're kind of throwing in the white towel for the tournament, the conference tournament, and they'll take the hit on the seeding, and because I'm sure that will affect their seeding a little bit at least. But they expect him to be back and at it. We've got lots coming up. Like I said, Mike DeCourcy joins us next from the Big Ten Network and the Sporting News. Stick with us. We're back with more right after this break.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Yeah, there's a contingent of Louisville fans that think they're going to get Scott Drew, which, I mean, I don't want to say they won't, but I don't think that's very likely.
That is highly unlikely. Why in the hell would he leave Baylor for Louisville? Louisville is not – it's a great job.
I will say I do think – I don't want to say their fans are delusional because that seems a little – I think it's a bit of a stretch, but here's the thing. They think their program is better than it actually is.
Yeah.
And I would think, honestly, I think that certain contingents of Indiana fans think that their program is better than it actually is. But I think Louisville more so is the case.
I agree.
Louisville can't just wave a magic wand and bring in whoever the hell they want. And I know Indiana fans in the past have thought the same thing. There's only I'd say 4 programs in college basketball that could probably wave a magic wand and get whoever they want, and that's Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Duke. And Duke's kind of a weird one because Duke will hire whoever the hell Mike Krzyzewski wants to be in the program, which is what they did with Shire, obviously. I don't know why North Carolina hired Hubert Davis. That was a weird one.
But it's working.
It's kind of been weird, that's for sure. Because I know they had the year they went to the finals. Then right after that they missed the tournament, and then I think this year they're not decent. They're pretty good again this year. So
top 10,
been very hit or miss with Hubert Davis. Let me see what his record is. So 29-10, 20-13, and 25-6. So we'll see.
Can't beat that. 21 seasons.
No, not at all.
Speaking of 21 seasons, here's a man who's undefeated, Mike DeCourcy.
I don't know if he can hear us yet.
Morning, Jim.
Oh, good morning.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Everything all right?
Oh, yeah. Nothing that 20 hours of sleep wouldn't fix.
Oh, man.
I hear that. It is that time of the season, isn't it?
It is indeed.
It's the We Sleep in May, John Rothstein time of the year, right?
Yeah, I always tell Rothstein, I'm sleeping in April. I don't give a crap what he says.
It is kind of dumb because there's only a few days in April.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when the Final Four is over, I am sleeping.
Yeah, it's supposed to be raining in April anyway, right?
All right, here we go, guys. 10 seconds.
Chop Steakhouse, Chop Shock, Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, March 12th, and our good friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network joins us now as we are heading right into the heart of the college basketball, I don't want to say season, but it is the heart. It's the time of year, baby, that everybody waits for. Mike, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Jim. It is an exciting time. There's no doubt. for those of us who have to project the NCAA tournament bracket, it's also a harrowing time. Indiana State, man, they put us in a tough spot. There are just certain circumstances that the job is to know how the committee is going to think. That's the job, to try to mimic what the committee is going to do, anticipate what the committee is going to do, and largely to explain what's happening and why it's happening. And there's a lot of myths. So I don't understand exactly why there are so many myths about the selection process, because we've tried over the years. I mean, Lenardi's been on TV forever trying to explain it. Jerry Palm's been on TV forever. And so I've done, this is my 5th year doing it. So we've tried to explain it, and do people listen? I don't know. I mean, I tweeted something yesterday that I thought was important to say, because when Indiana State lost, and other results as well, such as Appalachian State losing in its conference, I tweeted, remember, I'm telling you this every year, when the NCAA tournament teams, when the automatic bids are awarded, each conference has the option of deciding how to award it. If they want to award it based on how many points you score in a season, they can do that. I mean, it's up to them how to do it. They can do it logically to their regular season champion, if they do so desire, or to their conference tournament champion, if they so desire. And every single league out of 32 Division I leagues chooses to award it to the conference tournament champion. Even the Ivy League, which for many, many years was a holdout, and even the Big Ten, which for fewer years was a holdout, but was a holdout for a long time. They all do it by the conference tournament. So it's not the system that is a problem for Appalachian State. The problem is that they compete in a league in which they agreed that their team would make the tournament's automatic bid if they won the conference tournament. And unfortunately, although they were the best team in that league, they defeated James Madison twice. They could not win on the weekend in their semifinal game, and thus missed the final, and thus are not going to play in the NCAA tournament. And that's just the way it is. So I feel bad for the players at Appalachian State, and I hope they get a chance to have a postseason experience. They had a phenomenal year, but their resume is not an NCAA tournament resume. I had a person tweet to me last night that if Samford had not gotten in as a result of them losing their game last night in their conference championship, that it would have shown how broken the system is. And so I said, okay, well, what did Samford do? I looked up their resume, and they lost games to mediocre mid-majors, let alone mediocre teams. And they obviously won their league, and they won a lot of games, but they didn't play a formidable schedule. They played a schedule that was worthy of the conference in which they competed, but they didn't play a schedule that was designed to get them an at-large bid. And they didn't overperform that schedule by winning, say, every game or close to every game, as Murray State did in 2016 and didn't get in. And I had a problem with that one. But so the guy's response was they won 28 games. I can schedule 28 wins for any team in the country if I want. That's just not enough. That's why there's a process. So the process isn't that complicated, and it's been really consistent over the years, and it's produced the best tournament, the best championship event we have in American sports. And the people who complain that the mid-majors generally get a raw deal. Now, I'm not, as I said, Murray State 2016, tough deal, didn't agree with it. Morehead State, I believe it, not Morehead State, excuse me, Monmouth in 2017, I believe it was. I don't know if I have the year quite right there. They got a raw deal. It happens. There are teams in the majors that get a raw deal. Not by much, but some. But the process is really consistent. And as a result, you have this great championship. It's not, when people say that the mid-majors get a raw deal, Jim, I point out, here's the reality of it, okay? There are 32 automatic bids. About 6 to 7 of them are in power conferences, depending on where you want to draw the mid-major line. I might extend it out to include the Mountain West at this point. Obviously, they're not a true major conference, true power conference in the way that the others are with wealth and such, but they have a pretty good history of producing multiple bids. But let's draw the line there. That's the 7th league. So there's 25 automatic bids that go to mid and low majors. It's basically a third of the field. Here's the reality, Jim. The mid majors and low majors don't have a third of the best teams or the best players or the best coaches. That's the reality. The best players are going to the bigger leagues. And as a result, the best teams are formed there. But I'm not arguing against the automatic bids. I would stand in front of the steamroller to keep those from being eliminated. They are what make the tournament wonderful, and they are what make the tournament legitimate, unlike the college football playoff of the previous decade, which was a phony, we say who's good event. You win your conference, however it's designated, you're in the show. And if you don't, you put it in the hands of the committee. It's that simple. And every single team in Division I except Chicago State, which is coming, I believe, next year, has that chance. So the complaints about the mid-majors are hollow and unjustified. In particular cases, not hollow and unjustified. And in Indiana State's case, it's a tough one. I err to the side of them being in, but they made it tough because they lost their biggest games. That's the reality of the Indiana State resume. If it was Indiana State, Drake wins the tournament, that's a different resume than Drake wins, Indiana State wins, Drake wins the tournament. It's a much different resume because, okay, you went to Alabama, nobody expects you to win, nobody expects you to go to Michigan State and win. And they played Michigan State really well. But the 2 Drake games, the 3 Drake games, as it turned out, would be a much different resume if you took them out twice and then you got nicked in your conference tournament final. And that's what makes this really difficult. If it were the scenario I presented where they swept Drake and then lost in the tournament, I would have no doubt they would be in. But because they lost that one along with the 2 high major games, it makes their case more of a challenge. I still say I think they'll be in, but some of that depends on other bubble action that will happen starting, I guess, basically effectively today, but truly on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, a lot of talk, as always, about tournament teams. Everybody gets to have an opinion, and it's always fun to see that because there's always going to be teams where the fans that are complaining. Why? What about us? Obviously, the conference tournaments were invented for money. To make more money, to have more basketball on TV, to make more, sell more commercials, and I get that, but I just don't. Then why have a regular season where you grind out 20, like in the Big Ten, you grind out 20 games, 10 true road games, and you go through that and you win nothing but a banner, although. There's no way that a team from the SEC or the ACC or the Big 10 or the Big 12, that champion is obviously going to get into the NCAA tournament. So I get that they probably don't need a guarantee because has it ever happened in the history of NCAA basketball?
Well, the closest
champions,
in the Pac-12. Washington, I'm gonna say 2003, maybe two. I can't remember the exact year. Maybe 2003, 2006, somewhere in there. they won. No, it was later than that. I'm sorry. It was probably closer to 2000 and 2011 or 12. What? No, yeah, 2011, maybe 2012. They won the Pac-12 regular season and did not get in. That's the only major conference champion that we've had in my career, that regular season that did not get in the tournament, unless it was a postseason ban kind of situation. But on merit, that's the only one. So it doesn't happen. And the reason you do that, and it's a different deal at the major level, because you're building tournament resumes by playing in those conferences. Kentucky built a tournament resume even though they finished second in the SEC, but they went out and they beat Tennessee on the road, and they beat Auburn on the road, and they beat Alabama at home, and all of that, and Florida on the road, and therefore they built a tournament resume as an at-large team in case they don't win in Nashville this week. So that's different. But it's fair to ask, why do the mid-major and low-major conferences have tournaments? And I remember 20 years ago, you turn on some of those games on ESPN, and you see sometimes, not always, but sometimes, occasionally, you say, there's not a lot of fans there. Are they making money at this? And so I called one of the conference commissioners that I'd gotten to know for a column for the Sporting News, and I said, why do you do this? Why do you have a conference tournament when it imperils your best team, your champion, and there's nobody in your championship game, there wasn't really anybody in the stands? And the answer was simply, it makes us money. It makes us money. That's why we do it. We need them. We need the funds to run our athletic programs, and this helps contribute to that. And that's the answer. So, and I've always thought that, to get on ESPN or Fox or wherever that shows conference championship games, CBS Sports Network might have a few of them. To get on those networks, you could simply take your two best teams and have a conference championship game, and then you get one of your two best teams playing for it all and playing for the bid, and you get to have that game showcased on network so people know who your league is, etc. But that doesn't make as much money. And the third element of this, Jim, is if you look at the Ivy League, which had been the longest holdout from the conference tournament process and had for years, forever, for history, designated its champion as the regular season champion, its automatic bid. You know where the push came from to have a conference tournament? Because now we're talking the Ivy League. They don't hurt for money. Why are they having one? You know who wanted it?
What's the team that just unionized?
No, it wasn't Dartmouth. Wasn't Dartmouth. No, it wasn't. Not those. No. The coaches. The coaches wanted it. The coaches of the programs wanted to have
it. Wasn't Bob Knight, I can promise you that.
But they did. They're the ones that pushed for it. They wanted to have a conference tournament, and so they somewhat compromised with a 4-team conference tournament. So you have to be in the top 4 of the league to qualify. And this year, it's going to be a really good tournament. Yale is really good. Cornell is really good. Princeton is terrific. They're going to have a really nice semifinal, final round. But in another year, I think Princeton would have the auto bid. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, back when, gosh, it's been 35 years since Princeton, Georgetown. This year will be the 35th anniversary. I was in Indianapolis watching that game in the now defunct. They remember they had that railroad car thing in downtown. There was a Damon's or something like that. I think I was watching it there, or something like that. And so that was 35 years ago that we had that game. Princeton's going to have to work now to get to such an opportunity this year.
Yes, a lot of teams. A lot of talk this week about the net. I'll look at Michigan State and how they've been able to stay so unbelievably high in the net as a very mediocre team. Although they had some really good early wins, but they haven't done much to really make them. Last week or before the IU game, I think they were as high as a 22 in the net, which is shocking, and I think they still might be in the 20s, although that they're
25. They are 25 as we speak.
And you look at their record and you're like, that's a real head scratcher that makes you wonder, okay, why are they so high in the net when they're what, 18 and 14 now or whatever they are? It's
18 and 13 they are.
Same as I think Indiana, which they're probably 2,000 in the net. Something like that. The disparity is crazy. It's like, okay, I mean, I'm not saying Indiana should be this or that, but I'm like, I look at Michigan State and I'm like, why are they so high? Looking at the record and what they've done, they haven't done that much.
Right.
So I don't get that.
Well, here's something that might surprise you. Ken Pomeroy's Ken Pom rankings are considered by many in the basketball journalism business and in the coaching business and among fans to be the gold standard for power rankings. Would it surprise you to know that Michigan State is higher, number 19, in the Ken Pom rankings than they are in the net?
Yes. I last time I looked, they weren't quite that high. So, yeah.
They're number 19.
Went up. So by losing to Indiana, they must have gone up.
I can't explain it, but I can explain it. I mean, because the rankings are not about wins and losses. At the core, they are not. At the core, they are about how you perform on a possession to a possession basis. That's basically the core of it. I mean, Ken obviously has a weighted formula, how he calculates strength of opposition and things like that. How much, does it help you to beat by 50 or 40? He could better explain that than I could. It's his formula. But his rankings have Michigan State even higher. And that's one of the things that frustrates me is that people complain about the net, which is a predictive metric. It is a power index. It is not a what did you achieve metric. There are metrics that do that. The ESPN strength of record is one. Kevin Palga's KPI is one. There are some others that wins above bubble that are out there that are performance that are not performance metrics, but they are results metrics, and that's the reality of it. And people complain about the net for one reason, Jim. And that reason is that it was conceived and executed by the NCAA. And they yell at the NCAA for everything. They yell at NCAA for the weather. If you don't like the fact that a predictive metric is at the heart of the tournament selection process, I'm with you. But you're not complaining about that. I hear all the time, Jim, why don't they use Ken Pom? Well, I'm fine if they do, but it doesn't make a difference. It wouldn't change anything. I did an article a week ago about the supposed gaming of the net by the Big 12 Conference, by the members of the Big 12 Conference, exclusive of Kansas, which played a brutal schedule. But in general, the supposed gaming of the net. And I pointed out, if you took the top 20 teams in Ken Pom on that date, 7 days ago or so, 19 of the teams in the net were identical, not identically placed, but in the same general region. There were 19 of the same names in the top 20 of the net. And then if you took BPI, ESPN's power index, 19 of the top 20 were in Ken Pom. It's the same thing, different day. There are differences because as I just looked now, BPI has Michigan State all the way down at 49. So there are differences, But in general, they're the same. They're out there trying to measure the same thing. And as a result, they're mostly similar. So yelling about the net is pointless and kind of counterintuitive, because most of the people I've heard complaining about the net are suggesting Ken Palm as an alternative. And it's not an alternative. It's just a different flavor of ice cream. It may be a better flavor. I've never studied which of them is most accurately predictive of the results that will follow, but it's just a different flavor of ice cream. A totally different enterprise would be the use of a results metric. That would be different. And I have never heard a single coach complain that should be the case, not one, because I don't think they pay attention to that, Jim. I don't think they pay attention to the difference between the two. I think they just like to complain about what is aimed against them, so to speak.
It's a convenient argument. We've got to take a break. The great Mike DeCourcy is with us from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home, I didn't see your first tweet there, John.
You mean my text message?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to flash the deal up.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I can't always hear them with these earbuds in. Oh, let's see. Senior day, Woody certainly stepped forward and let everyone know he's done his job, and that has reignited a fire under people that they're even less happy with him.
Can you tell me, we played his answer on Beyond on Sunday night. How it was prompted? Was that an impromptu opening remark, or was there a question that prompted that?
No questions. That's just Woody talking.
Wow. That's interesting. I would not have anticipated somebody coming in after that win and putting that in the opening statement.
I know who else would do it is Kenny Payne, and he would not in that exact situation, but last year after their 4-win season, in their final press conference, he said that he thought his staff did a great job that year.
Ooh.
And they won 4 games.
That's been the thing about Woody. He has been a little arrogant in his press conferences, and he's been dismissive, refusing to talk about anything that he doesn't like, which there's been plenty of things. And he to say you don't have to talk about your job, I'm like, hold on here. You are a state employee, and probably one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid, if that. So I beg to differ with that one. Not only that aside, all of the people who give to NIL, there's a whole lot of reasons why, yeah, you really do need to talk about your job. But we'll see. It's certainly, I do not think it was.
No, you're fine. You can finish what you need to say if you need to.
I'll save it.
Okay.
Get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right. 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back on this Tuesday as we get closer and closer to spring. The weather is warming up. Mike DeCourcy is with us, so you know there's more sunshine for you right there. Welcome back. Remax Realty, of course, Cheryl Sizemore. Always a great sponsor for us. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore, and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Mike DeCourcy with me, as I said. And Mike, over the weekend, Indiana had its senior day festivities. Of course, Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal both go through that, but both announced they're coming back. At the same time, so I'm like, okay. So I kept asking people, I'm like, so do they get to do this again next year and get a whole nother frame and all of that stuff? I'm like, if you know you're coming back, why go through that? If you know, I mean, yes, you are a senior, and I guess you deserve that, but you're going to be a COVID senior next year. So, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what I've never been in that position to go through graduation twice. I did graduate early from college, but they didn't give me a cap and gown in December and then give me another one in June or May or whatever it was. I just went through the May one. So I'm not sure exactly why that was the case. But I don't. Hey, the better part is, like, if you're those guys, you go through the senior day ceremony, even though you know you're coming back. You got to win the game, right? You got to win the game. You can't do that and then not win. So they did.
Well, you'll be backstage going, just pull that. I'm not going to go through that ceremony. Yes. I'll wait till next year.
Or like hold off on the announcement until like June or whatever, and let everybody forget that you just went through senior day. But Anthony Leal, I pointed out on Beyond, was the key to the victory in the end. He scored 0 points in 24 minutes, I think it was. But on Tyson Walker's drive, everybody in the arena, everybody in green and white, everybody in red and white, or excuse me, crimson and cream, everybody knew that Tyson Walker was taking that last shot. And so Anthony Leal carried AJ Hogard right to the handoff and then said, "See ya, AJ. You can do whatever. He's not passing the ball, and I'm hanging here and making his shot as tough as possible," along with I think it was Xavier who was guarding the ball at the time. And his double team forced a really difficult shot, and certainly a shot that would not be in Tyson Walker's bag, really. He got too deep into the baseline, didn't get the look that he normally would get. He's lethal on that little 10-footer with the angle, with the option to bank. He's lethal on that, but having to go to the baseline, which is exactly what Anthony pushed him toward. It was a great little play in the game that saved their victory. So like I said, if you're going to do that, got to win, and they did.
Absolutely. Great defense by Anthony Leal. The whole time, whenever he was in, I was watching him. He was working his butt off on defense. That's probably why he couldn't score. He was working really hard on defending. And you got to give credit to Tyson Walker. He went off 30 points in that game. A great job by him. Michigan State did a good job coming back from 16 points down, but then they had 2 7-point leads, couldn't hold it as Indiana came back. So great credit to both teams. They worked hard to get that job done, and Indiana's able to pull that out. Of course, afterwards, you had the senior day festivities, but the thing that came out of that most that really stuck with Indiana fans was Mike Woodson and his insistence on how well he has done his job, and just an assortment of things that people are like scratching their head going, dude, are you watching the same thing that we're watching? Because we're not seeing that. And I have to agree, and it goes down through a number of things, through recruiting. He has not been engaged in recruiting the bigger names in this state. He's barely gone to see, and has gone to see them only recently. And they're not going to get those guys. I'm going to tell you straight up. Some of them, hell, I've seen them as many times as he has, and I'm just going when I can. I don't have a private jet that takes me to the same places that I did go that I know they took a private jet to. And one of which was a damn hour and a half away, but yet you got to take a private jet. So
not that you're bitter that you had to drive.
Well, no, they could have asked, Mike. They could have asked. But I'm like, if you had that at your disposal, I'm like, there is no excuse for you not making every effort to get to see these kids.
I will say that there was a story that I wanted to do once. I think it was around. It was around. It was after Carolina got Marvin Williams to come from Seattle to play on what became a national championship team in 2005. And I heard stories about how Roy Williams would finish a practice, hop on a private plane, fly to Seattle to see Marvin Williams, and then fly back and get back whenever, I guess probably by dawn the next day back to Chapel Hill. And I wanted to do an article about that. And I worked with the Carolina people for a long time to try to get to be on one of those trips. And I think after a time, I think that Roy saw where the story was going, which was basically to present him as the hardest working man in show business. And maybe that wouldn't reflect so well on the people working for him. I think that's why he ultimately bailed on the opportunity to do it, because Roy is a great guy and wants to present his program and the people that work in the best light. But that was who he was. I mean, he was willing to do that because that's what it was required to be the best he could be. And that was the responsibility of coaching Carolina, was that you had to get the Marvin Williams. That was your job, was to get Marvin Williams and Tyler Hansbrough and Ty Lawson and Ellington. That was your job. And he did the job as well as anyone who's ever done that particular job at Carolina. And he doesn't like to hear me say that. I've said it at a couple of occasions, written it. He doesn't want to hear that he did a better job than Dean Smith, but he did. He won 3 championships in basically 20 years. Dean was there longer and won 2 and had the best players a lot of times and didn't win it in smaller tournaments. That didn't require as many victories necessarily to win it all. I think Roy was Carolina's greatest coach. And part of that was the willingness to do that, to get on that plane and fly to Seattle. I'm not, I don't, other than what you said, I don't have knowledge of what is happening at IU. I do know that they have done a reasonably good job of getting big name players in there. Mbako, Jalen Hood-Schifino, they've done a reasonably good job with that.
And I think the name that should be thanked more than anyone for those guys, right there, Pete Yonkman, the president of Cook Incorporated, because if it wasn't for Cook, they wouldn't be getting those guys from Montverde. They wouldn't even had a shot at Liam McNeely, who just decommitted the day after it was announced that Mike Whitson would be returning.
Right. I understand that. I understand that. And but for me, where Mike missed this year, I'm not going to use the word failed. It's too strong. They won 18 games. But where he missed this year, and I've spoken to this on a number of occasions, was not being adequately prepared for the possible absence of Xavier Johnson. There was no backup plan. And in today's college basketball, here's the thing. You can have 2 point guards and you can play them both. If you have 2 point guards who are among your 5 best players, you can play them both. And if you have 2 point guards and one of them isn't among your 5 best players, then that player can get 20 minutes a game by subbing for either the starter, Xavier Johnson, or the starting shooting guard, whoever you happen to decide to deploy at that position, depending on how you want to set up. In this case, most of the year is Trey Galloway. There's 20 minutes right there without even without even blinking. 10 off of Xavier, 10 off of Trey. So you can get that guy minutes if you get that guy. And they didn't get that guy. And Xavier missed 2/3 of the season. And when he's played, they were very good. They weren't great, but they were very good. They won the last 5 games in which Xavier played. You know what their record was, Jim? 5-0 in the last 5 games Xavier Johnson played. That's the difference that having a capable point guard made with a lineup that included Trey Galloway and Mackenzie Mbako, Jalen Hood, Malik Renew, and Khalil Ware. That they were good enough, 2 to 4, to win games in this Big Ten.
Yep.
But they weren't good enough at 1 because 1 wasn't there. And he did not plan adequately for that. And this Indiana team paid for that. That's where the problem was for me. It's too important a position. It's like having 1 quarterback on a college football team. You got 1 quarterback. That guy gets a concussion because somebody hits him too high. What do? And you lose. And that's what happened.
Absolutely. Mike, I know the Big Ten tournament begins tomorrow. What is it? Today's Tuesday. Yes, tomorrow. So
Wednesday,
are you going to be in Minneapolis?
I will be in Minneapolis on Friday. If my flights are on time, I will be in Minneapolis in time for the
Got to get that private flight, Mike.
I got to get that private.
Got to get that private flight.
Got to get somebody to ship me that plane. Yes. So I will be there for the afternoon session on Friday. I will be in studio. It's always the most unusual language. I will be on the set, studio set at Target Center. I've never been comfortable with the verbiage on that, but I will be on the studio set for pregame, postgame on Saturday and Sunday with BTN, and I will be doing bracket hits on Fox Sports FS1 during the Big East tournament, and possibly some in the Pac-12 as well. So looking forward to all of that.
Does Indiana State make it in?
My as of today, I say yes. How much they move forward or backward will be dependent on the results of games in other leagues, the major leagues now. What happens with Villanova? What happens with St. John Seton Hall, Providence, in the ACC with Pitt and Wake Forest? One of them will eliminate the other if it comes to that. Wake has a game, I think, in the what would be their second round. They could lose that if it gets to the game between Pitt and Wake, one of them will eliminate the other in the quarters, and that team will not make the field. And then we'll see. And I'm trying to think of. I don't think there's. I think it would be wise for Michigan State not to do anything further foolish in Minneapolis, added on to what they've already done. I think that would be wise for them. And that doesn't necessarily mean they got to go out and beat Purdue or whatever, but they can't take another bad loss.
Mike DeCourcy, Sporting News, Big Ten Network. You can catch him this week as the Big Ten tournament gets underway tomorrow. Looking forward to it, Mike. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Jim.
We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Man, I didn't think he was going to go on like that. Oh,
All right, here we go.
even the Indy Stars
What'd they do?
picking on Mike Woodson.
Bloomington within the Stonecrest golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, March 12th. I hope you're having a good day, a good start to your week. Appreciate everybody jumping on with us. Lots of comments. Andy, let's see. Talking about Mike Woodson says he did not construct a roster in a way that would allow for a style of play to change. Yeah, the roster construction has been an issue all season, of course. Joey says Mike Woodson is destroying an Indiana institution. Your basketball needs an intervention. That's pretty much a quote from an Indy Star article that's out today. Brian follows that with saying, excuse me, have you heard of Archie Miller? Yeah, but the difference is Archie Miller is an idiot. He had no concept of what Indiana's basketball was about, no concept of the tradition, no concept of anything to do with anything at Indiana, partly because he didn't care. He didn't involve himself with anything. But sadly, you're seeing a lot of that same thing going on right now by someone who does not have that excuse. And that's a little mind-boggling, to be honest with you, because not only do they not have that excuse, they have every bit of the information because they were a part of it. There is an article out in the Star today by Matt Shaw, not any of the normal sports writers. But the funniest thing is at the very top, you see columnist opinion. This piece expresses the views of its authors separate from those of this publication. So they want to make sure that they don't get you confused that the Indy Star feels that way. It's just that person that feels that way. Sam says, since Indiana has 0 recruits coming in, how about having open tryouts for Indiana high school seniors who might like to come and play at Indiana? But getting back to the article, it starts out by saying that in 49 states, it's just basketball. He said that may be a cliche, but there is truth to it. As he wrote that article, there were 19,575 messages on the Indiana Hoosiers thread of The Burner, which is a national online forum of college basketball fans. The next biggest thread was Kansas with 3,200. That's 19.5 to 3.2 for Kansas. The whole ACC thread, in its entirety, 854. That's three spaces, 854. Indiana's alone is 19,575. Now, that does show, the large fan base, the veracity of I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but and there's a lot of you get a lot of add-ons with that, people that kind of jump on and I hate to call it mob mentality, but it's the sort of mob mentality. So that causes things to grow. But I'm not disputing anything. It's just kind of funny that the Indy Star has this article, which there's a lot in here to agree with, but yet they wanted to make sure that they put this line at the top that this does not necessarily represent the publication, just the writer. I just find that humorous. Then it also says that the passion that IU has is turning sour. In year 3, Mike Woodson has IU hovering around the 100 spot in most of the computer rankings, like Ken Palm and Bart Torvik. It's a low water mark not seen since the dark days of Tom Crean's rebuild in 2008. So when you think of Archie Miller and how it sucked with him around, and it did, they weren't this bad. It may have seemed bad because they weren't going anywhere, but this team specifically is just bad. There's a reason why they're bad in every stinking metric you can find. That Michigan State conversation is different, but you understand why this team is bad. And then I just talked about recruiting a minute ago. That's another issue. Obviously, you've had 0 recruits for 2024. A program of this stature with 0 recruits. Mike Woodson's recruiting style is that of, hey, I'm here, come see me. Hey, this is Indiana, whatever. But actually getting out and going to see people, although he has a private plane at his disposal, even to travel to places an hour and a half away, which I find utterly ridiculous and a waste of money. Seriously, you can't drive a damn hour and a half? I'm pretty certain Archie Miller did that. He didn't drive, but he was driven to a lot of those places. That's Mike Woodson seems above that. Seems above everything. I've got to be honest with you. I think he's just riding this gravy train of a retirement gig. Like nobody, he's riding it like Secretariat, baby. I think we have the quote pulled up. John has it from Senior Day, in which Woody kind of really set off a new, I don't want to say a new storm, but it just gives IU fans more of a reason to shake their heads and scratch it at the same time and say, what the hell, man?
Correct me if I'm wrong after I play this, but I do think this is the quote we were looking for. I searched all through his little senior night speech, and I believe this is what we were discussing earlier. But here's Mike Woodson during his chat with fans during Senior Day.
And I am the coach here. Understand that. And I'm not going anywhere.
Did I miss another?
That's not the one I was looking for, but that's a good one to pull up because
what was the one you were looking for? Because there's a chance I may have skipped over it.
When he talked about how well he's done his job and this and that and the other thing, it may have come right after he talked about that. But in that particular thing that he just said right there,
well, that's the end of the recording. So I guess there's a chance it was cut off.
But right, the sheer fact of that. Those cheers, notice one thing. There were no students in attendance because they're on spring break. So you have season ticket holders, a lot of blue hairs. While there was some cheers, that was not the full Assembly Hall audience making that noise. That I can assure you. But I don't care what anybody thinks. I know what I know about the recruiting. I know how many times he's seen certain people. And it's not good. When you have 0 recruits on board and you have not and do not go out and see guys, what the hell are you doing? What is it that you think your job requirements are? And why is it that you think you are above talking about it when you are a state-paid employee? One of the highest, if not the highest, paid employees in the state. His level of arrogance is been allowed to happen. And I don't want to I hate to throw Scott under the bus, but this is Scott's mess. The athletic director, Scott Dolson. How is there not a conversation and sits down with Woody and says, Woody, we need to talk. Recruiting is not going well. No, Mike, let me finish before you start bragging about how well you've done your job. Recruiting is not going well. Things are not good with our fans. You're not getting out and seeing Indiana talent play. You don't hardly have an Indiana player on your roster. What do you got, 3? You're not recruiting good quality talent because either your staff doesn't know how to recognize the talent, or doesn't know how to develop the talent. Everyone can brag about how well that Trace Jackson Davis and Khalil Ware have done. Well, I'm not going to dispute that they're doing well and that they both did well. But when you get the opportunities they get, the ball comes to them every time. That is the whole offense. Give them the ball. Just give them the ball. Okay. I don't see how that is success. It's not worked out team-wise. And just making the NCAA tournament, that's ridiculous. That should be a given. It should be a given. You should not finish ever in the land of Penn State and Northwestern and Nebraska These teams that are at the bottom should never be there, ever. Not with the talent that
Northwestern and
out.
Nebraska are both in the top 4 this season.
Well, Northwestern, I will recant on because Chris Collins has done a hell of a job with them, and they have got just a bunch of talent. Boo Buie and Ty Berry and all those guys, they've got a lot of good talent, and they've risen up. But Penn State is not that they're not okay, but you should be above that. You should be above Nebraska. You should be above a lot of these teams always. Worst case should be middle of the pack. That should be your bottom. But it's not. And when you have the arrogance to you can't acknowledge failures, and he acknowledges nothing. He does not acknowledge. Not only does he not acknowledge it, he refuses to talk about things like recruiting. And no one's going to ask him about specific players because we all know you can't talk about specific players in the media. So I don't ever talk to a coach about that when I'm talking to them. When I spoke with A.J. Moye over the weekend, first thing I said, I know you can't talk about specific players, so I'm not going to ask that. I'm just going to ask questions in generalities. Doesn't matter. Mike Woodson doesn't want to talk about that because the reasons are obvious to me. I am a little surprised that in this Indy Star column that it does mention Woodson's lack of visits to see, the fact that it took until February. That's last month. That's 2 weeks ago, people. It took until February for Mike Woodson to go see Trent Sisley. He had another opportunity to see him in sectional play. Didn't go. Couldn't get the private plane fired up, I guess. Matt Painter was there. And he's been there a number of times. It also took until February for him to go see Braylon Mullins for the first time. He's been here for 3 years. This is year 3. There's no planning. The recruiting has no concept. If this is your top these are 2 of your top targets, and you're seeing them for the first time 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was now, last month, ridiculous. The national media constantly, in this article, it says mocking Woodson's outdated style of play in his public comments. There are also rumors of player unhappiness. Rumors. I'll say rumors. I don't ever want to foster a rumor. But in this article, it says there are rumors of player unhappiness, including some people close to the players who did not like Woodson calling certain players awful. Now, that just means you're soft because Bob Knight called everybody. So these same people want to harken back to the days of Bob Knight, but yet you cannot get on somebody for calling a player awful because I promise you there was probably not a player that Bob Knight did not call awful at one time or another. Now, saying you're awful in a game, get over it. If you were, you were. That's I don't have a problem with that. But the program, again, I'm reading from this article. The mismanagement of the program and lack of effort on the recruiting trail is understandable for someone with no college head coaching experience, but it's unacceptable for someone making more than $4 million a year, especially since Woodson has advantages no previous IU coaches had, most notably the ability to recruit athletes who are openly receiving money via NIL funds. And trust me, Indiana has one of the top 5 NIL programs in college basketball. Paying these dudes is not a problem. Liam McNeely did not decommit because he wasn't going to get paid enough. Anybody like Kansas, for example, which they might pay him more anyway, but they could have paid him the same and said, how would you like to make that amount and win? Oh, whoa, you're going to throw winning in there too? Well, hello. Because winning is not what you see at Indiana right now. You see struggling, you see confusion, you see an inadequate program that is not stocked with the layer of players that it needs, level of players that it needs, because last year's recruiting fell through. Why? I'd love to know why everybody thinks that Mike Woodson is going to kill it in the portal this year when he couldn't kill it in the portal last year. Couldn't pay guys to come here. But yet this year's going to be different. No. I shake my head at that. Oh, mercy. Got me on a soapbox today. Let me jump off that thing. We'll take a break. We got lots more coming up. Chronic Hoosier. Maybe he'll calm things down. Back with more. Brought to you by the Ugly Grouper down on Anna Maria Island, Florida. I know tons of you have been there if you're out traveling. And lots of you live down in Florida. Stop by. Just west of Sarasota. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly be.
By the way, I don't think Chronic's coming on. He hasn't talked to me, but he's never been this late without saying something. So, but this will be a short segment, and Mike Niziolek will be on after that. I already talked with him. He'll be on at 10:10.
All right already. Woo! Man, I forgot to get coffee. I forgot to get cream up.
There's a lot of anger on this hotline right now, but hey, it's the way it goes, I guess.
There's a lot of anger everywhere, man. I'm telling you.
Like, there's so much anger, you'd think people probably just want them to freaking lose on Thursday.
It's...
Which that doesn't seem to make it. I mean, I'm just making that up, obviously. But if that were the case, that wouldn't make any sense to me.
I think that this is as high as it was for Archie in year 4.
Which is wild because Archie made the tournament 0 times in 4 seasons. And this isn't even year 4. This is year 3. Excuse me. And I don't have the records in front of me, but I think this being Woodson's worst season, I don't even remember what Archie's worst season was, but I don't think it was this, or I think it was worse than this. He had 16, 19, 20, and 12 wins. It's crazy the difference it is. All right, here we go. This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody. Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, March 12th. Thank you so much for being with us. Big Ten tournament gets underway tomorrow. 2 games on day 1. The first game features Rutgers and Maryland. Rutgers with one of the top defenses in the country. Boy, you want to talk about a dangerous team next year and the year after that? Look out, Rutgers. They have a top recruiting class coming in, and that might be what they need to give them that offensive boost to really give that program the fire it needs, because that's what they're missing. They're great on defense. They just don't have quite enough offensive firepower right now. Taking on a Maryland team that is the 12th seed. Rutgers is the 13. I think I'll go with Rutgers in that game, John. That's going to be a tough one to pick. But I think I'm going to pick Rutgers in that game. Following, you have that game's at 5:30, by the way, and it's on Peacock.
Yeah, the day of shame games are not always the most fun. They're not always. I wish I could take credit for that, but that's my buddy Nick Coffey, who I work with in the afternoons.
Well, tell him I said that's hilarious. I love that.
The opening day of your conference tournament, a place no one wants to be. But yeah, I think I would maybe take Rutgers in that game too. I mean, both teams have identical records. Maryland trending in the wrong direction when it looked like things were kind of. I mean, they were having a good middle of the season and things just kind of fell apart for them. So I think Rutgers is a good pick for that game.
Then that game is that's at 5:30 on Peacock. No, that's Central Time.
6:30
so that's 6:30
on Peacock.
That's 6:30 American time. Why do you put up Central Time? I don't care that the game is being played in.
ESPN's got it listed at Eastern, thankfully.
Yeah, they always do. I'm like, why would you do that? That's just dumb. Just because it's being played in the North Pole. That game is followed 25 minutes afterwards by Michigan and Penn State. Of course, you're picking Penn State in this game. Why would you pick Michigan? And why would you expect Juwan Howard to be coming back?
What's crazy though is I feel like there's not a lot of noise for.
I was just getting ready to say the very same thing. How funny is it?
It's because their football program is thriving.
Well, it's also because they're a football school. And they don't, they're not happy, I'm sure, but they just won a national championship in football. They're like, spring football is right around the corner. You don't have to worry about this. But I'll take Penn State in that game all day long. That will be the winner of that game. Will take on Indiana on Thursday. And that is the last game. Is that right?
Yeah, Indiana, if they continue to win, they'll play in the final game on each day leading up to the championship if they continue on. They're on the southern portion of the bracket, if you will.
And let me tell you, it's not an accident that Indiana's playing late. Do you know why
Actually,
Indiana's playing late?
It's not.
No.
It has nothing to do with the ratings. It's where the seating is. That's totally based. That is an accident.
Well, the seedings are not in order.
The way that they have it's based on where the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s are. They're all in separate quadrants, and then they put the seeds based on.
Not now, because on Friday the number 1 seed plays first, then the 4 seed, then the 2 seed,
That's
then
correct.
the 3 seed.
The 1 and 4s always match up. If it goes chalk, that's how it's supposed to go. I promise you, they're not doing it to cater to Indiana. I get why
it's not catering. It's not catering, but why would you not have the number 1 seed playing last? To mark for the
following game for the next day. So, like, the team who plays late will have less time to prep for the following game when you get in those further rounds. Because, like, for example, if you're in that final round.
You have the same amount of time.
Because the early team will have less time in between more time between the game they play in and the games the next day.
Yeah.
Again, I promise it's not. It is an accident that Indiana's playing at 8 p.m. That they didn't put them down there because of that. It's based on their seating luck. Anyway,
I'm not saying it's because they're good. I'm not saying it's because they're good.
I'm not saying it's they're good at all.
Fan base.
I get the ratings argument, but that's not how the Big Ten tournament works specifically.
I'll have to look at some other conference tournaments and see how their numbers lie out. I mean, what you're saying is coming true, looking at it right there, but we shall see. But Indiana will be playing last the evening game every day.
This segment. Let's
take a break.
I was trying to switch out our segment things and accidentally hit a button, so my apologies.
But I believe it is time for a break, right?
It is.
All right, let's take it. Brought to you by our friends at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, down in southern Indiana, right off of I-65 and Veterans Parkway. Great place to catch a game. Pizza, burgers, beer, things made fresh every day. And they are. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Good morning, Mike.
How's it going?
Where are you joining us from today?
Look like you're in your teaching room. Oh, arrived early.
No, I've just been here I was here for the women's.
Oh, man, that's you've had some time to kill, huh?
Got a minute. Yes,
There's
sir.
a great Mexican restaurant, not too far from the Target Center.
Oh, yeah?
Wait a minute, that's where we ate.
Is that Minneapolis?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Where did they go in the NCAA tournament? That was Albany Nest, right? So, yeah, that was Minneapolis. Man. It was Big Ten Media Days, I think. What? I don't remember.
Seems so long ago.
No, I think it was. I think it was pretty positive. But yeah, how are things going up in Minnie?
Well, the women had the early exits. So that was a kind of a cut that short.
Yeah, well, that may not be a one-time thing for you. We were just talking about this. The seedings for the Big Ten are laid out to where 1 will play 4 and 2 will play 3. But Indiana is set to play last every day. And I think I thought that was because of just trying to get higher ratings. And they're in that deal as opposed to having, say, the number 1 team, Purdue, play latest. But John thinks that is that just set the way it is one always play first?
I thought one plays second, doesn't it? Let me see.
Well, I meant
Purdue plays at noon, I believe, on Thursday or Friday, whenever it is their first game is.
It is. It's noon, but that's the first game of the day, right?
I believe so. All right, here we go. 15 seconds.
Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. It is Tuesday, and it is tournament week for the conference play, Big Ten play, of course, up in Minneapolis. Mike Niziolek with the Bloomington Herald-Times has been up there, camped out for the women's tournament, covering the Hoosiers. Indiana with an early exit, unfortunately, there. Saw them last night at the Chop Shop Market table as they're getting themselves ready and waiting. They have a big span, a break between conference play and when the NCAA tournament starts because Selection Sunday is the same day. And I often wonder, why not start it a week sooner to avoid all the conflicts that end up coming up? Why give them this? Why take this week off?
I don't know. I don't have the answers to that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm sure that somebody has a reason, but Indiana, of course, winning their last game, Mike, and getting up to a 6 seed, which I'll be honest with you, 2 weeks ago, that was almost a dream for Indiana to get there, a dream scenario, but they have won 4 straight games. And the only time they've done that this season in Big Ten play and gotten themselves in a much better position for the tournament. And of course, their only hope to make the NCAA tournament is to do something they've never done, and that is to win the Big Ten tournament.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not crazy. You're not going on a ledge to say they're playing the best that they have all season. That Michigan State game was impressive, especially considering, Trey Galloway, who's playing as good as anybody on the team right now, is missing the second half. Michigan State it was an impressive win to sort of gather themselves after leading all that. They storm back, they go down, and they showed a lot of resolve. And it was they're just playing really good basketball right now and sort of peaking at the right time. And we'll see if they can continue that here in Minneapolis.
Yeah, they will certainly need to do that if they are going to have any chance to keep moving forward. And things won't be easy for them as they start off their first game. I'm expecting it to be against Penn State, who plays Michigan. Of course, Penn State has to win that game, but the Nittany Lions swept Indiana this year. And if they're lucky enough to get by that game, they play another team that swept them this year in Nebraska, who has the double bye. So it's not going to be an easy road to hoe for Indiana, no matter what.
I think they've lost 4 straight to Penn State, and then Nebraska obviously handled them, easily this year. Was not a good matchup for whatever reason. Nebraska was, but yeah, I mean, not that it's, if they would have faced, Purdue in the second round or something like that, I mean, that's not exactly an easy path either. But these are 2 teams that they've just happened to be unsuccessful against. Penn State, I think, isn't a team that necessarily is a bad matchup for them in that second round. But we'll see if they can kind of steady the ship. Like you said, they play Michigan. Hard to imagine the season Michigan's had and kind of the disastrous finish that they had, that they'd get through that first round.
The importance of this is massive because there's no way of avoiding the elephant in the room. The pressure on Mike Woodson, even though the announcement came that he would be returning as coach, That was followed the day after that with a decommitment of his only 2024 commit in Liam McNeely, a 5-star from Montverde, who has decided to take his services elsewhere. Then today, I believe this article came out in the Star that calls for Mike Woodson to step down for the good of the program, which a little surprising, but to see it there, but it's there. And there is a lot of discontent among the Hoosier faithful, and I don't know if that's going to matter or not. But as of right now, they have said that he will be the coach next year. He certainly seems to be in fine situation with his comments on senior day of just bordering on arrogance, to be honest with you, on it. And instead of accepting that there are some problems and some things. And I think that's a big part of the problem is he's not acknowledging that there are problems.
Well, it's hard. I think he's taking it personal, that he's, he has earned, I think, look, they made the NCAA tournament his first 2 years. He was an alum here, had all that success as a player, and I think he deserves, I think he feels that he deserves a certain amount of respect, and that questioning his job status is sort of a personal attack, when that there are legitimate criticisms, I think, of his strategies this year in terms of recruiting, in terms of some of the early season play. And it surprised me because, he's handled the media in New York. He's not new to sort of the pressure cooker environments, but I think he feels like right now that he's done enough. And I don't necessarily think he's wrong to have not been on the hot seat for this next year, considering, the recent history here that the coaches have done worse and been able to get a fourth year. And so I get that part of it, but yeah, the declaring sort of, like you said, war on the fans or true fans or not true fans. Look, it's just going to make it harder for him going forward. He's going to have to win immediately next year. And that's that just raises the amount of challenge. I don't think there's necessarily any pressure in the Big Ten tournament this year. They've announced he's going to come back. I think he feels comfortable about that. Obviously, won't talk about it. So he feels good. So I don't know. I just think they're in a weird spot right now. And obviously, there's some toxicity in the fan base towards Mike Woodson, but I think, I don't anticipate he's a guy on social media listening to it right now.
No, but he must have somebody talking to him about it. But I look at the fact of things like his substitution patterns and how he's stuck by that and said, no, this is how I've always done it and how it's going to be. And then all of a sudden, and he says, I can't play these guys X number of minutes. All of a sudden, that just goes away, and he's playing guys X number of minutes, not substituting like that. Then there's the questions about recruiting, not getting out and seeing the top targets of this state very, very rarely and just recently. There's just some things that you really question as to how do you think you're going to get around these problems that you have by not doing these things. And I think he is completely going to rely on the transfer portal, where he has not exactly lit it up. They could not finish and fill out recruiting last year, hence ending up with an open scholarship, but is just completely sold on the fact that that's not going to be an issue this year.
Well, I mean, what is he going to say? I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. And I think that is discounting what Khalil Ware is one of the better transfers
absolutely
in the country from last year. So, I do think that they did have some success, but like I said, I don't think he's immune from criticism. And I think, if you certainly having an extra guard on the roster this year would have helped immensely with the injuries they had and filling that roster spot. So I don't think he's immune from criticism. I just think he's just taking the job part of it personally. But I do think he should, and this isn't the time of year to sort of answer maybe for some of that, but him addressing that or talking about it. I don't see, he's got to be able to do that. And I think, he's got to learn. And I said this to someone yesterday that some football coaches do this too, where they don't feel like, well, it's not my job to talk to the fan base or be the messenger or be the spokesperson, but it is. And I think in college, it's different than the NBA, where you have to talk directly to recruits through the media, that you have to talk to the fans through the media, and do that part of it, because that's what, you're expected to do in college, and sort of be that person and be that face of the program. And that's part of what you kind of get paid for. So, he's just framing it all as that everything. I think things are a personal attack on him, and I don't think it necessarily is. I think he could use that, his chances in front of the media, and after a game is hard, but we don't get a lot of time to talk to him in between. So that's kind of sometimes the only time we have to talk to him about those things.
Yep. Coming up in the Big Ten tournament, of course, Indiana, along with plenty of other teams, including Purdue, looking to solidify a number one seed. I don't think that it doesn't matter if Purdue lost anywhere in this tournament. It's going to affect their number one seeding for the year, and it shouldn't. But they built a season's worth of work that is unquestionable. Who's a team that you can see coming out of this that's kind of a surprise? Because the Big Ten doesn't exactly have a ton of teams like the Big 12 that's really, really deep. There's just, you've got Purdue, you've got Illinois, and I would have put Northwestern in there had they not lost Tiberi, because they were really, really playing well as also. But after Illinois and Purdue, there's a drop off.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Nebraska, if I had only gone by how they played against Indiana, I thought they'd be a really, really good team, right? Because they played their best basketball and dominated them. No, I think everybody in sort of the Big Ten outside of Purdue has something to prove, right? I mean, there's a lot of teams that, Michigan State's not on the bubble, but like their record-wise, the same as Indiana. I mean, their kind of metrics and their net rankings really high, but like, I don't know how they're an automatic bid. I mean, it just feels like everybody in the Big Ten outside of Purdue has something to prove. I saw some people putting Ohio State on the bubble. That was crazy to me. So we'll see. And could somebody come out and run the table and win a bid, and that wasn't in? I don't know. We'll kind of see. Purdue's just going to be tough to beat. They closed out the season strong, and Zach Edey's sort of just like the monster that you can ride in a Big Ten tournament. So, but I think anybody but them would be very happy to sort of get a win here and really boost their resume.
Looking at the ESPN, Joe Lunardi's thing right now, Iowa is ironically in the next four out. I don't even know how they were that close. But they're certainly on the next four out. And then the first Big Ten team that you see next is Michigan State, listed in the last four byes right now. Do they need to win a game in the Big Ten tournament if they lose their first game?
I think so, but I mean, like, they are so high in the net that I don't know if that just weighs them in, just in terms of getting them through that sort of that bubble discussion. But yeah, you'd think so. I mean, just the way they finished, and their overall record is not that impressive.
No, can you imagine a team that's 18-14 being in the top 25 of the net?
No, I think it's 8. Well, I think if they lose again, they'd be 18-13, or are they 18-13 now?
I think they're 13. That's the same record as IU, and I think that's what they are now.
I gotcha. Yeah. So, just very surprising that they've sort of escaped that bubble conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing, and not a good year for the Big Ten. The Big Ten tournament up in Minneapolis. Not a lot of people happy about that, but that's irrelevant. Who does the Big Ten tournament, is it going to benefit? Because, of course, Purdue is going to be looked at as a favorite. Illinois is going to be looked at as a second favorite. Both of those guys, they have no worries about the tournament play. Nebraska, as you mentioned, Northwestern, Wisconsin, those guys have work to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, the conference kind of really got beat up outside of Purdue this year, and so, resume wise, I think the Big Ten isn't really being talked about as much outside of Purdue. And like you said, I don't think Purdue will drop out of the fourth seed. Purdue's the team that really has not much to win and not much to lose, because I don't think they're dropping out of the top four seeds. I think they've really dominated to the point where if they have an off night, nobody's going to say that they deserve to sort of drop down or anything. So everybody else, like I said, I think that said Northwestern, those are teams that haven't earned a lot of respect, I think, nationally this year, and that they could really improve and get people to take notice if they were to run the table.
Yeah, only 4 teams in the conference this year with 20 wins. That's more than a little shocking. Wisconsin, they're right there with 19. If they win a game, of course, they hit that mark, but they're going to be a tournament team without question. The next team listed, ironically, is Indiana, because they have the tiebreaker over both Iowa and Michigan State, who are all tied at 10-10. And in a normal year, a 10-10 mark in the Big Ten would have gotten you into the NCAA tournament, even at 18-13. But Indiana's metrics are so horribly bad and different than Michigan State, like we talked about. Exact same records: 10-10 in the conference, 18-13 overall. Indiana with a win over Michigan State, but yet they are not even in the same universe as far as the metrics numbers go.
Well, I think that's part of going back to our discussion about Woodson, is that they didn't finish the season very far off from where you kind of expected in terms of record wise, right? I mean, this was sort of in all the different sort of scenarios you kind of pictured. This is about where you kind of thought record wise they'd be, just with what they kind of all the new roster pieces they had, and the non-conference schedule they played with some of the tough teams. That's where they took a lot of their lumps early, and so they didn't get upset there. And so you can kind of see why, look, they had a down year, but it wasn't sort of this abject disaster that a lot of people have talked about.
No, I think it's just a lot of the other things that go with it. It's the lack of recruiting. It's the lack of seeming to understand the recruiting of this state, and the choice to not recruit the state, but instead to just go after big time star names and hope that you get those. And that was all your eggs in one basket kind of a philosophy that worked in some instances and failed badly in other instances. But now going forward, that's just not something that I think that the Indiana can afford to do. They're going to have to start recruiting guys. And I'm talking about guys from within the state, in addition to the elite players from wherever they may come from.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's going to look, his strategy will work or not. If he needs 6 guys this year and he doesn't get kind of the type of talent he needs, I mean, he's gonna fall flat and fall on his face a little bit and have to eat some crow. But we'll see if it can work. If he gets a couple high end players, is that enough to sort of get this roster through based on who they come back? It'll be interesting to sort of follow based on who does go into the transfer portal and what they end up getting.
Absolutely. Mike Niziolek with the Bloomington Herald-Times. He is up in Minneapolis covering the Hoosiers for the Bloomington Herald-Times. Make sure you give him a follow and keep up with everything he's got. Mike, appreciate you. Go have some a good lunch today.
All right, sir. Thanks, man. We'll see you when you get down here.
Stay warm, brother. Mike Niziolek joining us from the Bloomington Herald-Times from Minneapolis, as Indiana set to play in the Big Ten tournament starting on Thursday, as the tournament gets underway tomorrow on Peacock. And that is going to wrap things up for us today. Greatly appreciated to Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Tronic Hoosier will be back with us next week. Mike Niziolek, of course, from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Big thanks to John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and you know what that means? Dylan Sin will be joining us from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Kyle Nedrip from the Indy Star, and we will get you caught up and set up for this weekend's Indiana High School Boys Basketball Tournament as play moves to semi-state action. It's getting close, baby. And the captain, Rick Bozitz from WDRB.com, will join us as well. Looking forward to it. Cannot thank you guys enough. As always, without you, we have no reason to be here, and we are deeply and sincerely grateful for each and every one of you guys. For John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines, I'm Jim Coyle. Until tomorrow, I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.